Welcome to the Unlist. This will be a bit of a shorter episode, but I want to cover influencers, the good, the bad, and the ugly concerning them. So, first things first, I always say that I'm not an influencer, I'm not a content creator. And the reason why I say that is I'm not monetized, I'm not sponsored, I don't try and do the things that I do with a career in mind. I'm not trying to make money. I have a tip jar that's not widely publicized, but it exists. If you want to throw me some cash, I give my address out freely for samples, but I don't seek recompense from anyone. For me, this is a hobby, and the day I stop enjoying it is the day you stop getting content, and I go find something else to do with my time. So, however, influencers, not to be confused with content creators and reviewers. Influencers are not here to make content and then get passive income from that content. Like, a reviewer or a content creator is trying to make something without ulterior motives. Like in the case of a fragrance reviewer or like a car reviewer like Doug DeMuro, they're going to give an honest opinion on the product that they're sent from the manufacturer or whatever. Hell or high water, it is what it is. And if the product provider doesn't want critique, they better not send them anything. And that's kind of where I sit, but I'm not professional, like I said. But professional reviewers have enough clout, have enough following, that brands are willing to let them critique. Like like a good food critic or something, or a good movie critic, they submit their thing and they're like, okay, he's probably going to batch this or whatever. But if they get a good appraisal or bad appraisal, like, oh, well, that's what we expected. We gave this thing to this guy. He's a notable critic or a notable reviewer. It is what it is, right? Influencers, on the other hand, influencers are basically the social media equivalent to infomercial hosts. Those of you who go back far enough, like me, you were born in the late 70s or early 80s, you remember when QVC first came around, 24/7 shopping channel, and then also shortly thereafter we had infomercials, which appeared on other channels that weren't QVC. Late at night, sometimes midday, if we're talking during the week. And these were dressed up like TV shows where you'd have a host, and the host would be talking about a product or a service, and you'd have a TV audience behind them, and the host would interact with the audience with the product. And then, of course, because it was treated like a talk show, it was a casual setting, or it was like a cooking show or something, they'd have a counter with food, and they were trying to sell you a cooking product or whatever it was. Okay. Usually the host was either the owner of the company or creator of the product, or they were a spokesperson for that brand. But because it was presented in a way that was entertaining, you could sit and watch it for an hour, 2 hours, however long. And then, of course, they would eventually give you the opportunity to buy the product. They'd put the phone number down below, and they'd push you with some FOMO gimmick like, oh, call within the next 20 minutes and we'll give you double your order, or we'll throw in these knives for free or something, right? That's how they did it. So the influencer is basically taking that and moving it to social media. So we're talking TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But the key difference is the influencer isn't Ron Popeil of Ronco, isn't Billy Mays. They don't own the brand, they don't own the company, they're not working for the company. They're completely freelance. So, being as they're completely freelance, they make no money off of the direct sale of the product unless the provider of the product decides to give them a commission sales link or a spiff of some kind, where if someone clicks on the provided link, they get a $5 tip or they get a percentage of everything sold. That's rare. That can happen, but that's kind of rare. Usually it's the other thing, where they actually make no money whatsoever off the sale of the item, and all their money comes from the platform itself, passively through monetization via like YouTube. You have to get enough followers to even get access to that. Instagram and Facebook are a little trickier. They don't directly pay people to use their platforms no matter how big they are, but they can be sponsored. So, and being sponsored means, again, you get the sales links, or just in general, they'll use the Instagram platform or the Facebook platform to divert you over to the YouTube where they do get paid. And of course, you can have shops set up on these platforms. Instagram has a shop, Facebook has Marketplace. So you can also make money that way by having sales links to products that you don't directly own, but you're selling on behalf of whoever after they give you the promotional materials, which usually means full bottles if it's perfume, or cosmetics or whatever. But the point is, influencers are effectively freelance marketing, freelance sales associates, freelance promotional personnel, the face of the company. But because they're freelance, they can work for anybody. All they need is access to the materials. And in order to do that, one, they have to have enough following to even be eligible. But once they have enough following, they get access to what are called PR lists. And the influencers are useful because a lot of niche brands, especially brands like Fragrance Du Bois, Creed, Parfum de Marly, they're not going to pay millions of dollars for traditional commercials because they're not big like Dior or YSL or Chanel. They're not going to make these big commercials, magazine ads or whatever. Maybe some, but they're not going to crank a lot of money into advertising in a traditional sense. They can save a lot of money by just giving out bottles to influencers. Hey, here's a PR list. If you have X followers, you can get on our PR list and we'll send you free bottles of all our newest stuff. And then all you got to do is talk about it. You're not allowed to review the product. Clearly, you can't say that you don't like it, but you have to discuss the product, how it's used. This is why a lot of people can easily mistake influencers for reviewers, since they don't always have to have a positive opinion. They don't always have to be promoting the item, like, oh, this is great, you should buy this. But as long as they cover their bases by discussing the item and how it's used and where they think it should be used, and have a neutral opinion, they're not going to say whether it's good or bad, they just put it out there in the universe, that's good. They get to stay on the gravy train and the PR list, and they continue to get the free merchandise. So the upside is the influencers, because they're a freelance advertisement for anyone that's willing to send them stuff for free, you can learn about a lot of things that you're not going to see a commercial for, you're not going to see a magazine ad for, you're not going to see it in a YouTube ad. So the influencers bring exposure, and that's the good thing. But the bad thing about influencers is that they blur the lines between legitimate, authentic opinion, review, critique, and just promotional materials, because some of them, in hopes of gaining more trust from followers, some of them in hopes of gaining a bigger audience, don't always want to disclose that they have promotional materials. They don't want to be fully transparent about the fact that they're talking about things that they are being given to talk about in exchange for exposure, again, passive income, sales links, so they don't want you to realize that they are trying to sell you something effectively, because then you lose trust in them, because you're like, oh, this is just a glib, con man, whatever, slick talker kind of thing, and then you unsubscribe and you go away. So the bad side is a lot of them will not directly lie to you, but it's lying through omission. It's by omitting certain truths, if you can quote that for me. I know where you've heard that, but it's not a lie. I've just omitted certain truths. I didn't tell you that this was given to me for free, right? That's the bad. And then, of course, the ugly, because there's a good, there's a bad, there's an ugly. The ugly about influencers is that a lot of them kind of lose sight of why they started doing this, because they get so wrapped up in the cult of personality, the personal brand they accumulate with their platforms, and they become incredibly narcissistic. They become sociopathic in how they objectify their audience and treat other people. They don't have a human side to them anymore. They become, and this is where I always make comments about them being carnival barkers or PT Barnum, or I say the clown show, because it's the clown show. It's just look at me, subscribe and click, and it's like, it's almost like they forget that they're there for a reason, right? They forget that they're there to promote something, or that they're there to speak on something. It's just all about all eyes on me. Look at me, pay attention to me, me. I'm so great, I'm so wonderful. And I'm not going to name names, but you've seen some people in this community who've gotten really huge by becoming influencers, and then they kind of do this whole trajectory, and then they crash and burn, or they maintain their following, but they become like a walking meme. There's a certain person who I'm sure you're going to figure out who I'm talking about. It's kind of a parody of themselves now. They had their own fragrance line. They were at the top of the world. Now they just look like they're just snorting meth off of a hot radiator every day and just, going through the motions. And they're not even half aware of what they're saying most of the time anymore. It's really sad. Every other word is sex. Every other word is power, right? And it's like, okay, what is this? What's this person really talking about? Do they even know what they're really talking about anymore? Or are they just so drunk on their own hubris? So that's the ugly side. It's like the deterioration of the human condition. When you focus so hard on promoting yourself that you forget that you're not promoting yourself. You're supposed to be promoting a product of some kind, right? Now, some influencers also make a transition away from promoting someone else's stuff to having their own business, and I applaud this. I'm not the biggest fan of it, wouldn't do it myself, but a lot of them do transition into being a legitimate business of their own. I mean, Doug DeMuro has his Cards and Bids website now, for example. Let's see some other examples. You've got Jeffree Star started off reviewing makeup and showing people how to apply makeup, and now he has his own makeup line, and he's become actually quite a celebrity on that. So, I mean, kudos to that. In the fragrance world, we've seen people like Eugen from You Smells Good launch his own fragrance brand. We've seen Jeremy Fragrance launch and then shut down his own fragrance brand. So, I'm not going to talk anymore about that. But we've seen some good things, Barbara Herman, who started off mostly with blogs and written stuff. She didn't even do videos. She just went from the written space right into having her own perfume range, which is pretty impressive. It's hard to get a lot of notoriety through written. Trust me, I know. I write reviews. It's hard to get any notoriety through written form. People don't want to read anymore. They just want to have stuff, come at their screen. So she was able to launch Eris perfumes. Eugen has less abstraits. Fragmental launched a store, not really a fragrance brand, but a store of his own, a retail outlet. And then, of course, Mr. Smelly has the Naughton and Wilson line. So, a lot of these influencers, they reach a certain level of public trust, a certain level of capital that they can actually, fulfill their dreams. Now, there are a lot of fast-talking perfume brands that will latch on to influencers and make use of them. Navitus is infamous for taking influencers and promising them their own perfume range and then not really letting them do anything. Like, oh, you're going to create this whole fragrance range and we're going to let you customize everything. But then they take the control away and they just, they take whatever notation you give them and they just give you some regurgitated stuff and they're saying, this is what you get, take it or leave it, right? But, oh, you've already signed the contract, so you can't walk away now. Ha ha, fool you. So we've seen a couple of different perfume ranges come out from different influencers that came out under Navitus. And honestly, I've smelled them, and none of them seem to really have anything to do with the actual influencer. Like when I've smelled a lot of the ones that were supposed to be Redolessence fragrance or Big Beard Business or whatever, the Galleria stuff from Ashton, none of those really smelled like anything that would come out of the creative minds of those people. They didn't smell like those people were actually involved in them at all, only on a very token level. So influencers can actually be taken advantage of just like their audience can. It does work both ways. You have to be careful. Some of these brands will use the influencers and the influencers' own desire for fame and fortune, and they will abuse that to their own advantage. So you got to be careful. You know, everyone's got knives out, right? Everyone's got knives out. So that's the thing. Influencers are basically the modern equivalent of your infomercial. That's a tongue twister. Infomercial salesperson, except they're doing it on social media. And because they're freelance, they don't work for a specific brand. They just take whatever they can get, and they usually make their profit. They make a career out of the passive income they get from the platforms they're on, and sometimes commission links and things like that. Or their sponsors. Like I said, if they get sponsored, then they get some cash from the sponsors. But that's how it works. And you just have to be aware that there are some influencers who have some credibility. Like I said, they've launched their own businesses. They've got their shit together. And I get a thumbs up to them. But then there are some who are just, you know, the clown show. Like I said, they're the carnival barkers. They're the snake oil salesmen, the con men, you know, and they will say anything and do anything to win your trust. And then once they have your trust, they're going to take it like a ball and run with it. And you're going to be left holding the bag, right? Looking for the snake left holding the bag. Don't let that be you, okay? That's not cool. You have to really vet who you follow. So, and you can't always tell an influencer from a reviewer because, like I said, some of them don't always disclose. And if you ever find someone who's a friend of yours or a mutual and they're trying to be an influencer and they're constantly pushing you to promote their stuff or bombarding you with stuff to get you to help them grow their platform, don't be afraid to cut them off. Be like, hey, knock that off. This is annoying. And if they keep doing it, then cut ties. Just get out and run away. You know, it's not worth it, honestly. If someone has delusions of grandeur and they're trying to involve you and you're not making any money out of it, then there's no point in involving yourself. You just walk away. Let them have their fun in La La Land and be Mr. Big, you know, King should have turned mountain or whatever. So your peace of mind is more important, okay, than their platform growth. Trust me on that. I know firsthand. And that's basically it, guys. That's my opinion on influencers. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, the good, it's viral marketing, exposure to new things. The bad, they're not always honest. And then the ugly, sometimes they lose the plot and stop becoming effective influencers because they become more into themselves. So look, it's a good, bad, ugly. That's the game, and that's how it's played. And it's not me. It will never be me. I promise you. Okay. If I was ever to launch a business or anything where I'm asking for money, where I'm selling a product, it would be under a separate name, under a separate platform. It would not be related to anything that I do with Scented Devil or Varanus Radari. I don't ever see myself doing it, of course, but if for some reason hell were to freeze over, it would be under an unrelated account. You would not be attached to this stuff at all, because that wouldn't be fair. Okay, I would keep that sort of thing separate, but I had no plans of doing it. So this has been the Unlist, and thanks for watching.